Has you ever noticed how a walnut looks remarkably like a brain? Or maybe how a kidney bean looks like a kidney?
Oh, yeah, it's striking sometimes.
For centuries, people thought that wasn't just a coincidence. They believed it was a profound clue, like a secret language hidden in nature.
It's a really fascinating idea, and it goes back much further, and it ran, deeper than a lot of us probably realize.
Absolutely. So this deep dive is all about exploring that very idea, the doctrine of signatures.
Hmm.
It's a really intricate, complex, and, let's face it, often misunderstood system of knowledge. Today, we're using this fantastic epilogue as our guide. It really summarizes a long journey of trying to understand this doctrine.
Right, so we're going to unpack where it came from, its philosophical roots.
Exactly. How it flourished, why it eventually sort of faded, and maybe surprisingly, why it still seems to resonate with us, even in our modern scientific world.
We want to explore what it was, sure, but also why it mattered so much to people back then, and maybe what lessons it still holds for us about finding meaning, finding connection.
Okay, so let's start with the foundation. Because the doctrine of signatures, it wasn't just some simple folk belief, was it?
No, not at all. It was described here as a pervasive, complex, and philosophically coherent system of knowledge. That's quite a statement.
It really is.
And the core of it, the absolute heart, was this profound belief in a living, interconnected cosmos, a universe that wasn't just dead matter.
The idea being the macrocosm mirrored the microcosm.
Precisely. The big picture, the universe, was reflected in the smallest things, like plants or even our own bodies, and everything vibrated with these sympathetic correspondences.
Like hidden connections, a kind of cosmic harmony linking everything.
You got it. Think empathy, but on a cosmic scale. And it wasn't just plucked out of thin air, it had some serious philosophical underpinning.
Right, you mentioned that. What were they drawing on?
Well, you had the vision of the Neoplatonists looking for that unified spiritual reality behind everything. You had the wisdom of the Hermetists with their more esoteric knowledge. And then the secret fire, as they called it, of Kabbalists and alchemists who were exploring mystical energies, transformations. It was a really rich mix of ideas.
So a grand design.
Mhm.
And who were the key figures who really brought this idea to life, who popularized it?
Well, there were visionaries like Jakob Bohm. He saw nature quite literally as a divine scripture. He read God's intentions in the forms of plants and minerals through his spiritual insights.
Wow. And then there's Paracelsus. He's a complex figure, wasn't he? More experimental.
Very much so. Quite the innovator for his time, pushing boundaries. But even with his focus on experimentation, he still acknowledged these outward signs of inner virtues. He saw those visible clues in nature as pointing to hidden powers.
So even the proto-scientists were still seeing signatures.
To some extent, yes. And then you had the really diligent herbalists, people like Gerard, Culpeper, Fuchs, Dodens.
Ah, the famous herbal writers, they must have played a huge role.
Absolutely critical. They were the ones meticulously documenting these things. And what really kicked it into high gear was the invention of the revolutionary printing press.
Of course.
That allowed them to codify all this knowledge, these signatures, and crucially illustrate them in these amazing books, these herbals. Suddenly, this ancient wisdom wasn't just for scholars, it became accessible.
Right, it spread like wildfire. So for centuries, people really saw the world as this legible text.
Exactly. The shapes of leaves, the colors of flowers, the way a plant grew, even where it grew, it all seemed to whisper these explicit divine purposes. You just had to learn the language.
Amazing. But then
Yeah.
things started to change. The great wheel of time, as the text puts it, turned. A new way of thinking emerged.
Yes, the scientific revolution. That was the major turning point. This new paradigm began to, well, dismantle the very foundations of the doctrine of signatures.
And what were the tools, the intellectual instruments that did the dismantling?
Well, you had the rigorous empiricism of Bacon. This insistence on observation, on evidence, on experimentation over just accepting old ideas.
Okay, so focusing on what you can test.
Right. Then came the stark mechanistic worldview of Descartes. He saw the universe less as a living organism and more like a giant, complex machine. Very different perspective.
Totally different. And what about the practical tools?
Well, think about the dissecting knives of Vesalius. Suddenly, we weren't just looking at the outside. We were mapping the inside of the human body in detail, moving beyond symbolic interpretation.
And the microscope. That must have been huge.
Absolutely. The piercing gaze of the microscope wielded by Hooke and Leeuwenhoek, it revealed this whole unseen microscopic world, things far beyond what signatures could ever hint at.
A completely new reality opened up.
And you also had the precise measurements of a new chemistry emerging, analyzing substances, breaking them down into compounds.
So the focus shifted dramatically.
It did. The new science sought certainty in quantification, finding truth in numbers and measurements. It looked for efficacy in chemical compounds, not symbolic shapes. Truth was now in the unseen microscopic realm, or in chemical analysis.
End result. The animated cosmos, this world full of messages, was essentially replaced by a silent machine.
That's a good summary.
Yeah.
The poetic language of signatures started to look unscientific. It got pushed aside, relegated to quaint superstition by the rational thinking of the Enlightenment. Quite a shift.
It really was.
Yeah.
Yet, here's the interesting part. Despite being scientifically, well, debunked in many ways, the doctrine of signatures hasn't completely vanished, has it? It still holds this strange allure. Why do you think that is?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I think it speaks to something deeper than just whether a plant literally works because it looks like a lung.
Yeah, it taps into something more fundamental.
I think so. Our sort of innate human desire to find pattern, to find design and purpose, to feel a connection, maybe even a spiritual one, with the natural world.
Right. In a world that can feel chaotic or random, this doctrine offered meaning. It suggested a benevolent communication from a creator, perhaps.
Exactly, and it fostered a really intimate connection with nature. You had to look carefully, observe contemplatively, to even try and read the signatures. It demanded attention.
It provided a framework for making sense of it all. And maybe that need for meaning hasn't gone away. We actually still see echoes of this kind of thinking today, don't we, in some surprising places?
We do. Think about modern ethnobotany. Researchers often study traditional folk wisdom about plants.
And sometimes that wisdom was guided by signature-like ideas, right?
Sometimes, yes. And occasionally this leads to genuine serendipitous discoveries of medically active compounds. It suggests that careful observation, even if the reasoning behind it was flawed by our standards, sometimes pointed in the right direction.
Fascinating. So observation itself has value. What about biomimicry?
Oh, that's a perfect example, where engineers and designers deliberately look at nature's forms, its elegant designs, to find ingenious solutions to human problems. It's like learning directly from nature's blueprints.
Yeah, that feels very connected.
And maybe even the placebo effect has a whisper of it. It shows us how powerfully belief, cultivated within a meaningful framework, can actually influence our physical bodies.
That's a good point. And of course, you see the symbolic language of nature everywhere in holistic health movements, in art, in literature.
It definitely continues to flourish in those realms. The symbolic power is still potent.
So where does this leave us? If we look at this whole journey, from its philosophical heights to its scientific decline to its lingering echoes, what's the takeaway for us now?
Well, the epilogue suggests the path forward isn't about choosing sides. It's not discarding science for symbolism, or vice versa.
It's about recognizing they both offer something valuable.
Exactly. Recognizing their distinct but maybe complementary strengths. Science is incredible at explaining how the world works. The mechanisms, the physical laws. It gives us prediction, control, efficacy.
But maybe it struggles sometimes with the why, with meaning, purpose, that sense of connection.
Often, yes. And that's where symbolism, or this older way of seeing, comes in. It provides that deeper meaning, that sense of wonder, that intuitive connection.
So going back to the walnut,
Yeah.
you can totally accept the science. You can understand the biochemical reasons why walnuts are good for brain health, the omega-3s and all that.
Measurable stuff.
But you can also appreciate the historical significance, the psychological resonance of the fact that it looks like a brain.
Yeah.
That resemblance has meant something to people for centuries. The two aren't mutually exclusive.
Precisely. That's the integration. It's where critical thinking meets, maybe, profound appreciation. Where the memorable doesn't completely erase the meaningful.
That's a really powerful way to think about it, holding both perspectives. It reminds me of the final wisdom shared by Zoran, the guide in this epilogue.
What does he say?
He reminds us that even with all our powerful instruments and our relentless scientific inquiry, the cosmos remains vast, its mysteries unending. He says there will always be realms beyond your immediate grasp, subtle patterns that defy quantification, and meanings that resonate only with the deepest parts of your being.
That's beautifully put. It acknowledges limits without dismissing progress.
It does, and he encourages us, saying, the human spirit of inquiry, this insatiable curiosity, is your greatest flame. Keep it burning, for it lights paths, both known and unknown. And crucially, respect the old maps even as you draw new ones.
Respect the old maps. I like that. Acknowledging the journey.
Exactly. Which brings us to a final thought for you, the listener. Building on Zoran's wisdom, he essentially says the wisest person doesn't just chase the next scientific truth, but also understands the long, winding path of belief and understanding that led us here. Because the journey itself holds the deepest lessons.
So it's not just about what we know now.
Right. Consider the how and the why. How did ideas like the doctrine of signatures arise? Why do they hold such sway? How might reflecting on that historical journey of an idea actually deepen your own understanding of, well, pretty much any subject today?
That's a great question to ponder.
The journey of knowledge, like those whispers of the universe Zoran mentioned, continues, especially for those with the wisdom to truly listen.